I'm a newcomer to the Naimul Huck party. Knowing that you have, just doing a bit of research. You did a TED talk 7 years ago, so you've been around in the space for a while. But the last 6 months or so, I stumbled on you, and I don't know if it's through Twitter or LinkedIn, but I've come to just deeply appreciate your insight and the value you add to Web3, especially around this idea of like community and branding and marketing. So knowing your background, you've worked on everything from federal elections to nonprofits. Now you're the senior vice president of operations at Vayner3. I believe you have a unique perspective into the world of Web3. So I just want to dive right into this idea of Web3 for mission-driven organizations. I believe that nonprofits, NGOs are just severely underrepresented in this space. And while we have seen some, getting involved, I just think there's so much more potential to leverage Web3 for impact and change. So kind of setting the stage, why should NGOs invest time and resources into this space? What value is there to be had?
Yeah, so thank you for saying all of that. Very kind of you. I have definitely thought a lot about the way that every industry is going to leverage Web3, and nonprofits, political campaigns, non-governmental, assistant organizations, intergovernmental bodies, all have some potential to benefit from blockchain and from the general principle of decentralization. Number one is probably the most well-known use case, and that's that there are currencies that hold value and can interact with fiat currencies all over the world. In terms of the size of an economy, at some point it was a $2 trillion economy. It's significantly gone down since then, but there are still, millions of people around the world who have continued to be participants in that economy, and millions more who are onboarding every day through the mechanisms of Web3 and NFTs and other, simplified versions of interactions with blockchains compared to buying and selling and trading cryptocurrencies, that are starting to understand that, the proof of a valid store of value, the proof that a token is unique and transmittable, is sufficient for putting your belief into it in the same way that we have done for centuries with fiat currency. And so that opening of economic barriers, whether it's allowing the common person to participate in advanced financial options, on a global exchange, or it's an individual artist being able to commercialize their artwork to a much larger global audience through these global NFT exchanges. It's really about access, and what Web3 is building up to be, through the baseline of crypto, and then the secondary aspects of the blockchain, and now artificial intelligence and augmented reality and metaverses and VR and all the things that this is barreling towards, is a free flow of information that people can trade on, that people can exchange value through knowledge and ideas and personality. And what that means for the global economy is that it's going to shift in a new direction. And so when you're a nonprofit, you're looking at ways that you can raise money to solve problems. You're looking at ways that you can use technology to solve problems directly. You're looking at mechanisms that empower more people to participate, so that you can expand your audiences and engage more people. You're looking at systems that provide transparency so that people can believe in what you're doing, and justify their investment of time or money. And that's what Web3 is shaping up to allow for, is all of those things. And so if you are a nonprofit, you have, at some point in your lifetime decided to add credit card payments so that you can make it easier for people to donate. At some point, you probably got one of those Square machines so that you could go in person and people could tap their credit cards or their phones and use Apple Pay or Samsung Pay, because that opened up the options and reduced the friction and barrier to reaching a specific population, which is people who are moving away from holding paper money. That's going to be the economy in the future. Money is already very digital. And payments processing solutions are getting more and more sophisticated, and we're going to see wider adoption of the use of digital currency for just daily transactions. And what crypto wins, or whether it's a central bank currency, it remains to be seen. But the fact is, if you are raising money, you want to give everybody the opportunity to donate in their preferred currency. Why would you create a barrier? As long as you can count on that donation holding a certain amount of value and working within the infrastructure that you have set up to report your taxes and pay out your supporters or pay into projects. So that's number one, is the ability to raise money. There's a lot that has been done by solutions providers like the Giving Block and other entities to facilitate that type of transaction with a large community of people who, many of them have earned tremendous wealth over the last couple of years, and they may be looking to give because it is a compulsion of their heart, or they're looking to give because they want to offset, their tax liability. Whatever reason, there are opportunities to engage, and the outcome is still altruism. So that would be number one. And then there are a million other use cases that the blockchain empowers, from carbon credit markets and the ability to fund carbon recapture programs in a way that's transparent and verifiable and audited, or other mechanisms of using the transparent tracking, tagging, Internet of Things interoperability to trace where endangered species are going. There's just a lot that can be done when you abstract away from this is a system for moving value around, to thinking about how this could be used to verify anything that previously might be uncertain. And there are a lot of opportunities for any kind of non-governmental organization or nonprofit to utilize those technologies.
Knowing that nonprofits, NGOs tend to be more conservative fiscally, for example, I've heard it being a challenge to even have to have Bitcoin or Ether on the books, and so a lot of NGOs opt for using the Giving Block or something similar, where it's just immediately there's an option to convert it to fiat.
Right.
I guess how would you talk to just an organization that's I'm not sure if this crypto thing is gonna last?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my conviction is that it is going to last. That I've seen technology adoption cycles enough in my career that this has all the signals and agency and momentum of every other major technology adoption. It's happening significantly faster than some of the previous ones. And what we're talking about are monumental shifts in the human understanding of value, of money, of how exchange works, of how things are priced. And this is like an up leveling of society in some ways. So even if the first experiment of proving the utility of the blockchain to to display that digital scarcity is something that can exist, that there can be 21 million Bitcoins and no more can be created. And that is based on a cryptographic trust. And that these things are unassailable from external forces, to, the, futuristic use cases that, people will spend increasingly more time in virtual spaces interacting with one another. You and I met over LinkedIn, which didn't exist, not too long ago, and now we're talking to each other about ideas based on your perception that I had some authority in this space, or some knowledge, or some experience from a credible chain of, my remarking on things in public social channels. Like that's already the proof, right? For a lot of people, the
Yep.
metaverse is Discord, it's Twitter,
Right.
it's Fortnite. It's the place that they have put more value into the, digital space than the physical space, and they're choosing to deploy their money. So to the question of like, will it exist in some form? Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt that people will utilize this technology. Is it the best solution for everything? No. Sometimes databases work really well. Our standard, methods of supplying technology services are really good in some cases, and don't require a blockchain. In some cases, the blockchain itself is a risk, to privacy, because it is transparent. It's designed to be public. Or it could be a risk if, somebody creates a private blockchain, which many companies are doing, to, track transactions within their own, environments and their own supply chains. So certain risks around making the right bet in terms of what you build on. Certain risks exist around backing a project that may not be validated, or doing a partnership with the, project that might not be validated. You want to work with, people who know what they're doing in the space and can evaluate risk, can evaluate, some of the telltale signs of somebody with, negative intentions for this engagement, and be able to make an informed decision either through data or, working with experts. And what happens, out of that engagement is also dependent on what your goals are. If your goals are to supply people with more mechanisms for payments, then, you may see an uptick in that. You may see that your core donor base never needed that, and so you wasted a cycle around implementing technology that there wasn't an audience for. So then you have to go out and find the people who are willing to give, and create reasons for them to give, help them understand what it is you're doing, build those mechanisms, come to them. And so, that awareness also might be a ephemeral thing. People might be interested because of, not because of supporting you, but because you're selling them a digital art piece from an artist that they are a fan of. And that might be just a temporary interaction. It may not go on forever. I would say that, engagement doesn't always turn into dollars, but there are ways to value engagements and turn engagement into, a platform for your entity to become more visible to more opportunities that might support that mission and the cause that you're trying to endorse. So, there's a clip from Steve Jobs where he talks about how marketing is about values, and how, when he came back to Apple, he really simplified the idea that like what they build are machines for people who want to change the world, and you have to be a little bit crazy to want to change the world. And so we're going to not talk about megahertz and bits and the like functional technical expectations of our products. We're going to talk about how you can do amazing things with our products, and we celebrate the people who are endeavoring to do those amazing things. And, in that, he like looks at Nike and he's like, Nike is selling a commodity product. They're selling shoes. This is something that a lot of people could come in and compete with them on. But what they've built is this brand that like celebrates athletics and athleticism and athletes. and that they do that extremely well. And so when you're coming with a technology, with a solution, with a an infrastructure component that you feel is revolutionary, you have to be able to line up your belief in that thing with the value of the consumers that you're trying to engage with, or the donors you're trying to engage with, or the government entities that you're trying to persuade to allocate resources to helping solve this problem, or the voters that you're trying to build belief in and drive their compassion or their interest towards solving a problem that you might be uniquely positioned to solve or have unique knowledge around how to solve. So, I'd say that like fundamentally, it comes back to a question of how are you communicating your values and why you're adopting these technologies. And if you've done your homework to understand what the technology is, there are really clear and compelling narratives that you can convey that a lot of nonprofits have already started to do really successfully.
Yeah, I love that. It's not so much just getting into the space for the sake of it, but it's like a true extension of why the business exists or the organization exists in this new medium. It kind of reminds me of that. It was like circulating on the internet probably last year. Bill Gates and David Letterman. It was like 1995, and they're talking about the internet and Letterman has no idea what's going on.
Have you heard of radio?
Right. Have you heard of radio? Right. Right.
And the most old man thing he could say.
And now, when we want to check the scores of something, we just load an app on our phone and check the score. Yeah. There's so many parallels to where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, so like I work at Vayner3. This is an enterprise founded by Gary Vaynerchuk. He's infamous for calling out just sort of latent resistance to change in markets and changes and shifts in human behaviors that they're very clear to him when he recognizes them, and he puts his money where his mouth is. He invests with conviction, and so this is like his narrative is about how when he was helping scale his dad's business as a kid, everyone was saying, why would anyone buy anything online, right? Let alone these products, which are heavy and liquid and, difficult to manage. And they want to go into a store and, hold the product in their hands. But he said, because it's easier, right? You can go through a list and you can watch an expert express their opinion about this product on a YouTube video and go in with an informed decision. And now this seems very commonplace for us because, we have a culture of looking at reviews and reviewers and making consumer decisions based on an abundance of information that we didn't have previously. And all through that cycle of the internet being a place for commerce, there was a lot of people who said, this is never going to make it. No one's going to buy books on the internet. Right. No one's going to, right. No one is going to want to wait for shipping, whatever. And those barriers started to come down. But there have always been people who are resistant to it. In the book Groundswell, Charlene Lee wrote about, and I think the preamble, it's a story about how the CMO of Sony was looking at, I think it was Amazon reviews of his products, and he was like, how do we stop this? What do we didn't authorize this. Right. We were supposed to embargo these, reviews and having worked in PR and marketing for a long time, I imagine this PR firm was panicking. It's like, who are these people who are writing reviews of our products?
Right.
Now, it's gotten to the point where, it's so accessible that anyone can express their opinion about anything, that if you do a good job and you're thoughtful, you grow to be MKBHD and have hundreds of millions of people watching your content to understand what is this individual's perspective, whom I trust, that can help me make a purchase, and they're going to bring magnetic paper to show you the layout of magnets on the back of the iPhone, stuff that you weren't getting otherwise, or no other consumer could read. No one in my family could tell me that oh, the layout is made with these special types of magnets and it's very compelling. So that type of information, that like nerdiness and like geekiness and just going down the rabbit hole and being passionate about stuff, that's a new economy. And so coming back to the idea of blockchain and decentralization and the infrastructure of decentralization, which will be multifaceted and not just based on blockchains, but will interact with them for like certain types of confirmations where things need to be validated, will allow for people to trade on information. And you know, if you have a passion for a certain type of creator and you want to invest all your money in that creator because you believe in them and you think they're, you know, the smartest person in the world and their values align with yours and they're giving you experiences and entertainment and all the things you'd hope for, that carries more weight than Netflix. You know, people, young people today are spending most of their time on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, watching short form content from people who come from anywhere, not from you know, a grooming onboarding into a Hollywood environment, not from, you know, a specialized school or something, but people who had a passion, who tried to do something, did it consistently enough that they gained visibility, and now they have a small economy of fans that they can sell ideas to. They're selling courses, they're manufacturing products that go directly to those endpoints. So everyone who has a cause, whether that's I want to be influential individual and make a lot of money, or I want to save children in parts of the world that have access to no resources. Look at the way in which people are making decisions about where to put their money. Look at where the underpriced attention is at the current moment, because it's constantly shifting, and understand how the infrastructure of money exchange and value exchange works in those mediums. And you can build a new mechanism for engagement and community and you know, education and understanding that is unparalleled relative to, you know, just what we had 10 years ago, when like I would have to go to a center and get a brochure and talk to somebody to understand something that I was slightly interested in. And today, like, I can't even imagine going through that like number of hurdles to find something out. I just look it up on my phone and it's all there.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's increasingly there in a way that like is in human language with ChatGPT and AI tools. So it's getting easier to do massive things as an individual. And when every individual is empowered to be, you know, their own corporation, their own nonprofit, their own, you know, complete agency to express their ideas, you know, the infrastructure that facilitates the, you know, pegging of those ideas to the individual and the valuation of those ideas, it really, I mean, it's awesome. It really, like, it baffles the mind to think how far this could go.
There are some that would say that, hey, it's fine, like technology will happen and we can kind of wait and see what happens, wait when mass adoption hits, and then kind of enter the space. But we've seen what happens with Toys R Us, Bed Bath and Beyond, didn't develop that technology layer infrastructure at all, and now they're, you know, bankrupt or playing catch up. So what are the consequences of being late in Web3? Is it the same as the, you know, the .com era of the internet, or is it different?
Yeah, I'd say that if the innovation doesn't suit your goal or your values, if it's not something that has the, you know, the runway to be additive, you probably don't need to distract yourself with it. Like, focus on what's working for you. If your business is thriving and you have a model down and you have the outcomes that you've hoped for, if your nonprofit is scaling and you're driving adoption and it's all happening through word of mouth, if you are, you know, a live event manager and you're booked out for the next year, like, don't disrupt your business model for the sake of adding an innovation layer. What I'd say is understand what's out there, especially if you see other entities in your vertical adopting these technologies, and make a informed decision about whether or not it's additive to what you're trying to build. Just adding technology for the sake of technology is a big problem in, a lot of, especially among marketers, right? Because they're like, oh man, I don't want to be left behind. There's this FOMO, that, if some attention is being paid to something, that I have to focus on where the attention is going. And that can be a misleading signal. It can be something that takes you down the wrong path. You should be open to experimentation. You should be a rapid prototyper and be willing to, try things out. If it's not something that fits within your budget right now, what is a way that I can grasp it, in its entirety without needing to do a deployment, that lets me at least understand what I'm missing out on in the current moment and where this thing might be going. So with Web3, I'd say everybody should understand this, because it is going to be, an infrastructure layer of the internet. And we know how powerful the internet is. So if you are, doing any kind of, enterprise today, and you don't have a consideration of the internet, then like you are of like sort of a unique business. Like you are, maybe because of like scarce resources, you're in a part of the world where there is no internet access, or your internet access is mediated through Facebook because they give free internet in your country, and you don't want to, operate on that platform. There's certain like real barriers to technology adoption that might prevent you from getting into it. But I think that you should at least know what it is that you're missing out on. There's no real cost to you spending 50 hours doing research, and feeling, solid about where things are going. If you feel that FOMO after 50 hours of research, you have the means of doing something, then do it. Don't hesitate. Because if you recognize what is being built, most of what, like the examples we talked about, like the Sony CMO, it's because he was seeing this for the first time. He's like, what is this? People are writing reviews online. I've never seen this before. This is bad for business. But I'm sure 5-10 years later, he was writing reviews, right? Or he was going out to those individuals and saying like, hey, can you write more reviews, because people aren't seeing our product, or they're not converting because they expect to see a certain number of reviews, right? The behavior changes. So just because in that first moment, there's an interesting story about how somebody was, a Luddite and didn't want to adopt the technology, doesn't mean that that person stayed in that state forever. And these things do move fast. What we found in NFTs was there was a lot of interest among a group of people who understood the technology and were investing because they liked the art and they liked the idea of it. And then more people saw, hey, this is a place that, there could be increased valuations, and big money started to flow into it. And there was a lot of greed. And, Gary called this a long time ago. He's like, most of these projects are going to go to zero. 99% of these projects are going to flatline, because you can only sustain so much attention on, 200 NFT projects. So what are you going to do? At some point, you got to go and hang out with your family. At some point, you got to sleep. You can't just be looking at alpha in Discord all day long. So that the reality of life comes up against that scarcity of time and the places that you're going to hedge your attention. And right now, what's in vogue is, ChatGPT. People want to understand, like, what are AI tools going to be able to do for me? Midjourney, can I use these tools to bypass some barrier and skill sets that I have? And so even us as a business recognize that what is happening, what we're focused on is where society is moving. And we want to be at the bleeding edge of that. We want to help enterprises understand that. A lot of the work that we do is just education and going to these companies and explaining to them. 2 years ago, it was explaining to them what an NFT was and what the blockchain was. Today, it's what are these AI tools? And even though it's not necessarily Web3, we know it's going to be an integral part of the new internet experience. And so if people are using this to create a majority of the content a year from now, what does that actually mean for human content consumption? What does that mean for like novelty? Is there going to be just a regurgitation of these trained algorithms on the existing information of the internet forever, and we're just stuck in the cycle? Or are people going to continue to innovate and introduce net new concepts? And if you are the one company or the one NGO who's doing this, then maybe that really sets you apart. And what you learn is that, like, I shouldn't do AI at all. I should be writing original papers about what's happening in the world. There's a lot of ways that you could flip the idea that missing out is a bad thing, and just say that if you know why you're missing out and you are doing it intentionally, you're making the right decision.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, let's talk about one of the most significant contributions that Web3 has brought us, this idea of community. And you said something along the lines of that community is more of a verb than a noun in Web3. I'm curious just to get you to expand on that.
Yeah. My experience has been community can take a lot of different forms. To describe it as a singular thing is probably missing out on the multifacetedness of it, of, you know, the ways that people can experience community. But community, the verb, is how Web3 is a new mechanism for bringing people together. Because when you recognize somebody who holds a token from a collection and has made that same, you know, he's put their intention into, I believe in this because of the founder, because of the art, because of the mechanics of it, because of the utility. I share that thought process with them. I share that conviction. I share that investment. And we have an identifier. So that was like the very compelling thing about profile pictures, was we were interacting with people all over the world in a way that was now enhanced by this unifying aspect. So when I went on Twitter and I saw there's another Bored Ape, there's another clone, there's another Cool Cat, I at least had that common interest to the point where I could introduce myself and say, you know, what are you doing next? What are you interested in? Like, what's the project that you're researching? Where do you think this is going to go? And usually those conversations over time, you find, hey, this person shares a lot of other interests with me. We like video games. We like pizza. You know, let's be best friends, right? It's like it's back to like the third grade level of like fight is like you like to run, I like to run. You know,
Right.
And that, you know, was really nice, especially during the pandemic when we found that meeting new people was impossible. And suddenly, like, we had this mechanic that we could, you know, reference. We were being sort of pushed into these environments where the infrastructure to prove out that you can token gate and create an exclusive community, and there's value in that, could be manifested. And then people were like, all right, I'm in this club, I better meet the other people who are in this club. And now I have friends that I talk to every single day. And, you know, sometimes it's about what's going on in the market, but more often it's about like, what are your kids doing? You know, how are you feeling? I heard you were sick last week. Oh, you're on vacation. I saw your pictures. They look great. You know, it's a social interaction. Even though in some cases I've never met them in person, or when I have met them in person, I felt like I'm meeting you for the first time, but I know you so well because we've been chatting for hundreds of hours. So I've done that pre-screen. I already view you as like a compatriot, as somebody that is near family to me. And that's remarkable. I think that parents are seeing this today with their children coming home, and the first thing that they do is get on Roblox. And you know, the playtime goes on. Like, I can't imagine like what is happening at recess today, where they're just plotting out like, which game are we going to play? You know, how are we going to, like, you know, how are we going to take advantage? What time do you have to go for dinner? That we're going to be pulled away from this. And what they're asking for their birthdays and their, you know, holidays is, I want Roblox. I want to be able to like wear the skin. I want the sword. And this is because this is where their attention is. This is where their engagement with their friends is. This is a freedom that they had where like I used to have to get on my bike, and like when the sun was setting, it was like a scene from Stranger Things. Like you were riding your bike at home, to home before like all the lights were coming on, and you hope you got home before that last light came on because mom would be mad. Now they're just like, all right, I can like maximize my time of engaging with my friends in the way that like is so compelling and immersive. Let me enrich this experience with some skins or whatever. And so when like you see that transformation of human behavior, it doesn't mean that we're losing out on human to human interaction. It's, in some ways an enhancement of it, and in some ways it's facilitating a new form of it. I think that, what we'll see on, the augmented reality side is an integration of systems that allows us to feel those benefits in the real world and have a, enhanced view of our surroundings that brings in context, information, and value, so that we are more optimized in our day-to-day interaction. We look at an aisle and see all the prices and discounts or whatever. We see a friend and it's like, oh, it's his birthday today, right? Like that kind of like that would be amazing because everyone will feel more valued. Everyone, because what I would do otherwise is like, I went on your LinkedIn, I went on your before I met you, I caught up on like what you've been posting so that I have something to talk to you about. It's like, oh, I saw you went to Egypt last week. Like, tell me about your trip. That kind of stuff will be more contextualized. And when, there's a lot of neuroscientists who talk about how the brain is amazing at processing information and, imagining the future and predicting and doing creation, but it's not that great at memory and storing information. And like Google has like proved out that if we have all of the knowledge of the world at our fingertips, and then eventually in front of our eyes and probably at some point beaming into our heads, we can dedicate more of our brain power to solving problems and processing situations and getting in touch with our feelings and being more empathetic human beings and being able to have the capacity to connect with one another. And I think that like that outcome is actually very promising. But it does take like, a certain understanding of the risks too, like, because there's an endless, depth of, just human like base need satisfaction that is also out there for these systems to optimize for, which is like the risks that we run into with the algorithms in social media today, which are tuning us to be more extreme and to, follow, impulses down a rabbit hole and reinforce that like these are rewarded behaviors, which I think takes us out of, a space of being able to relate to one another and be empathetic.
I'd be curious to get you to speak on the potential of the value of community, especially around like a profile picture or NFTs, and just the ability that we have now to kind of harness a global audience in a way that we haven't, and kind of gather these people around a set of values. Do you see any nonprofits doing that currently, and do you see value in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the most basic example is the people who wanted to do good with their cryptocurrency are going to the platforms that allow for it. Some of them are coming with the intention of like how can I, use arbitrage and profit from this potentially. And some of them are coming with like, their heartfelt intention that they want to do good in the world. They want to, add value back. And they want to increase, the longevity of humanity and use their newfound wealth to do so. That basic, like, being able to interact with a mechanism around something that like they've had to put their belief into, and there's a community of other people who have put their belief into that like, it's facilitated in just the fact that they're using the same thing. Like I'm sure the first people who, did credit card payments, like saw, another company do a credit card payment and they're like, how's it working for you? Is this going okay? Like, what do you do? Did somebody come up with a fake one? Right. How do you deal with that? Right. Like that kind of stuff. You find commonalities like, oh, you got the new iPhone, you got the new headphones, whatever. And so whether it's just recognition of the technology level, or it's a more cerebral recognition of somebody who has found an esoteric art project and is like representing themselves as a member of a community because they hold that, like that takes it to another order, right?
Hmm.
They have, in the scarcity of their funds, made a selection here, and it aligns with your values. And again, it comes back to unifying those values. And so for nonprofits, I'd say that there's a lot of people out there who they may not need these mechanisms, just inherently to like believe in each other and connect with each other. But if you could go around the world and recognize another person who's given, a portion of their wealth to a charity just on a patch that they wore on their shirt, or like a pin that they were wearing, that's a conversation starter, if nothing else.
Hmm.
At the base level, that's a signal that gives them the ability to enter and say like, hey, like, you believe in this thing too? I believe in this thing. Like, tell me more about why you believe in it, and let me tell you about my experience following through on my belief, right? And this is, manifest in so many, environments. There's at one level, like, if you're wearing a Patagonia vest in Midtown Manhattan, you're like, oh, you're an investment banker. What's up, bro? And on the other hand, you have like, if you're wearing, a skull cap, you're like, you are part of my religious tradition that dates back thousands of years, and I love you for that, right? Like,
Hmm.
there's something very compelling about those signals that we wear and we represent ourselves as, that allows us to say, I'm going to access the thing in me that made me believe in this in the first place, and project that onto you as a shared value.
Hmm.
And that's what, if I have AR glasses that show me another Bored Ape, I'm like, I've walked down the street in like merch and had people pull me aside and like just be super excited to meet somebody
Right.
that is also in this club. They're like, oh, who are you? What's your number? What's the like? And to a certain extent, like, there's that's like a very base value. It's a financial thing, or it's you were an early thing, or you may like know something kind of thing, and it can be transactional, but like you can keep laddering that up and elevating it. So if you see that there's a trade that you're doing, and I want to exchange with somebody, and their wallet contains the token that was given as a thank you from the children's hospital because
Hmm.
he was a donor, like, there's no other reason why you would have that unless you were like a good person, right? Unless you were somebody who shares my values, unless you're someone that I can trust. And that's where like these signals of trust and like these unifying mechanics start to break down barriers, and like all of the artifice of like meeting a new person and trying to build up your personality and like misrepresent yourself kind of start to fade away, and what's left is like the contents of your wallet, which are like a very transparent representation of things that you care about, things that you may have done. Used to look at like somebody's Foursquare check-ins and saw like,
Yeah.
you're the mayor of the bodega underneath me. Like, how did you do it? Like, I've been fighting with you for the last 2 months trying to get that spot.
That-
That was a shared interest, and it was transparent on a public, semi-public database. Now imagine you scale that to the entire world, and you can share those types of symbols and values. You can really do remarkable things in fostering community that way.
Hmm. So let's imagine a nonprofit is wanting to enter the space for the first time. And, there's already been a lot of, I think, helpful kind of pointers as to how and kind of methodology. But I guess where would they begin? Like, what are some of the first steps to learn? And I could point out, I think a lot of people, including myself and our organization, found, Vayner3 did, I think, like Web3 trends to expect in 2023, really helpful
Mhm.
PDF. Uh,
Yeah.
kind of going in depth about some brands and why and how they're doing it and the difference in how brands are approaching it. But yeah, how would they get into the space?
Yeah, so it's exactly what you described. It's going out and like finding the entities that are thinking about this all day long and looking at the market and looking at the brand landscape and figuring out what's successful, what's effective, what resonates with people. And most of those people are engineered now to synthesize that information and output it and provide that as an educational resource. So educating yourself is number one. Go to Vayner3.com/learn. There's a bunch of white papers like the one you described, and they'll take you through what is a POAP, what is the blockchain, what are some of the prevailing trends that we anticipate. How do you use Discord, like these kinds of things. There's a million great resources, and you can go far down the rabbit hole in understanding. And even if you're looking for a very specific use case, like there's likely been a write-up of that represents the specific use case you're looking. This is what we do, right? We're doing research all the time, and we're using a lot of the same tools that you're using. And then, in some rare cases, we're doing some data science, we're doing some analytics, we're looking at stuff on chain. So we take it further because we need that context to filter. But when you're just starting, it's a matter of doing, right? Like it's getting involved. I think the best thing that anyone can do in understanding Web3 is set up a wallet, get your first purchase done. Ideally, it's a hardware wallet so that you're like starting off with a mindset of security and understanding that there are risks out there. There's threats out there. There's people who are trying to, circumvent your trust or your trusting nature and, engage with you, with nefarious intentions. And you got to be careful. And so there's really great, papers and Twitter threads and blog posts that are written about how to navigate that. So if you're a nonprofit, I would start by, learning as much as you can. Then once you have a good understanding of what's out there, analyze your intentions for using that type of technology. The low hanging fruit for a lot of nonprofits is like, do a fiat onboarding into crypto or a crypto payments acceptance, just to expand the suite of options that you're giving people to contribute money. The next stage after that is understand places that money may aggregate or flow, or money may want to be offset into what it is that you're doing. You can form direct relationships with people over digital platforms like I've described. And what this could end up being is, we did a program with St. Jude's and Sappy Seals. And, the Sappy Seals came out with their meme force and, promoted artist Mary Lai's work and wearing her shirt that had the emblem that she designed for our Art Basel activation around St. Jude, and promoted it and drove a lot of donations. And they were able to receive these donations from an audience that like they may not have typically been able to engage with, but that community felt passionate about the work that they were doing. And that, interaction was easily facilitated because they're identified by their token. They, could interact with, the ecosystem. You could recognize one another from the profile picture on Twitter and, reply to them. So those are like some of the ways that we encourage, whether you're a brand or a nonprofit or, a creator or an influencer or an actor, is look for potential partnerships to give you that authentic entry into the space. And then as you build from there, start thinking about what unique problems can Web3 solve for me. So we hear from, a lot of nonprofits, they have difficulties thanking their donors. Like their donors will give something big and they are like, what can we actually give back that is meaningful, that may not cost us a lot of money to produce, because that, it reduces the value of what they've given. For a long time, it's been, we have to host these galas, we have to have these like golf tournaments, we got to do these like big grand things so people feel special about the environment in which they're giving. I think that if we can move away from that, it means that those funds are being more properly allocated to the end goal of that charity. And some of these virtual rewards that you can give people may hold significantly more value for them in the long run. That, like, you were the first person to donate crypto to this charity, like that moniker, that provenance and that history, and being able to
Yeah.
sort of have that is like the thing that maybe down the line is the reason why you get a job. It's the reason why somebody trades with you. It's the reason, it's something that you look at fondly as a memento, the same way you'd look at a plaque or a trophy that they might give you, but it doesn't occupy any space. It, is something that is very accessible. You can have, multiple options in how you display it. So, that might be like an individual piece of art that an artist says, like, I don't want you to sell this. I want you to donate this back or give this to your best donor, and they get to have this because I want to thank this person for donating to your cause. And while I don't have the means to do this, 7-figure donation, I can give what I perceive as a 7-figure value art to them as like a one-off, and no one else will have that. And then when, we're visiting each other's metaverse galleries, I'm going to be astonished. Just like, you have the people, like, how did you get that? I was like, oh, this is the thing that, I gave to a charity, and he gave this to me. And so, there are remarkable stories about that happening where, like, the gift is then hidden away in the mansion. And, it's like, okay, well, I'm sure at some point it's been a good dinner party story. But if you want to extend that narrative that, like, giving is, recognized and valued and rewarded by many different entities, that's a very public way to do this potentially, right? And anyone can look up that, like, it happened at this time, and it happened right after this transaction of cryptocurrency went to the nonprofit. So there's a lot of ways that you can start to game out and model out the increasing engagements, the increasing value perception, the facilitation of interactions. And then when you get to that point, you're starting to think about, like, how can this technology improve what we do, right? And it's like, okay, we need to be more transparent in how we're sourcing supplies. Well, we can actually track every step of our supply chain on the blockchain, and then anybody can look up and see they sourced from this place, they spent this money on this thing, it went to this site, and then it ended up in the hands of the person that it was meant to end up in. And that kind of proof is, like, very hard to achieve. You're required to trust a third party to audit or evaluate the entity that they went through, and they actually did that. And that's there are pitfalls to that too.
What gets you most excited about the future of the space? And even from the nonprofit angle, what are you kind of looking forward to seeing?
Well, number one, excited about the drive for making this more accessible. The mainstream adoption hasn't happened yet, right? Like, there are numerous initiatives designed to make it easier, either from building technology that makes transactions more human readable, to having scalable custodial wallets issuance, to providing, like, credit card based fiat on ramps so people can participate in the economies, to user experience that's one click, that's easy to set up, eliminating scams and frauds and all that kind of stuff. And evolving the way that we talk about this space, right? There's a lot of projects out there that initially they were met with revulsion by the community. Reddit was, like, not a great place to talk about NFTs because people were like, I don't believe in this. But now they're one of the biggest NFT platforms in the world, right? They've issued millions of custodial Polygon wallets through their Reddit vaults. They are doing, tokens on individual communities. They started with a community, and then they're adding enhancing features to it, rather than what we see often is, like, we're going to create the token first and then the community is going to come. So that reversal required a change in language. And so they call them digital collectibles. Starbucks is calling their NFTs journey stamps. They are, fundamental technologies. And just like we don't talk about how much we love MP3s anymore or ever, I don't know if anyone ever did. Like they might have said, like, we would say, I love Spotify, right? I love the access to the music. I don't talk about the protocol or the technology or the infrastructure that allows for me to listen to streaming music. So I see NFT going the way of, those terms that like when I'm talking to developers, when I'm talking to blockchain enthusiasts, we may reference that terminology to be descriptive. But what we're talking about is art or tickets or collectibles or passes or whatever it is. And that kind of shift means that more people can come in and feel comfortable. And when we have that, mainstream adoption and millions of people are interacting because their Taylor Swift ticket, is coming to them as an NFT, and that, has a special, discount for the album, and, 10 people get like a backstage pass out of it. And these things are all programmable. So you can have much richer experiences. I see every point of human interaction starting to adopt these, mechanisms. And the like tech of it and the underlying infrastructure start to fade away, as long as we are able to continue to have a certain level of transparency and understanding that like what I'm building on is, it has this value because it's scarce. There's no like mechanism for someone to, build, an issuance of tens of thousands of these whenever they want. Or if they're doing that, at least I understand that they could do that because it's transparent. So decentralization, I think, is very powerful. Transparency is essential. As long as we maintain those values, then this technology can really thrive. It can empower lots of people in many different ways, and that wave is like just getting started. When there's billions of people interacting with these systems, we can only imagine how powerful the interplay of ideas turning into commodities and assets that people can trade with each other and store, and look back at in perpetuity to the first issuance on the blockchain is just going to change the way that we think about stuff. It's going to change the way that we think about what's important. And like it gets us closer to that like Star Trek dream where like the entirety of humanity has like left currency behind. We have abundance and we're just focused on advancing our society. And yeah, like I think that's a it's idealism, but like maybe we can get there, right? Maybe we can put aside all of our conflicts and just focus on finding ways to put the most value in the best ideas, that are like that increase our humanness and make us better people. And if we can endorse that and we can promote that, then it has the opportunity to be realized. So that like idealistic future is what I'm hopeful for. But in the meantime, like, yeah, like let's see the other side of the bear market. It'd be good to return to like people not being afraid, and recognizing the value of the technology for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Naimul.
Yeah, Steven. Thanks for having me on.